Hi, I'm Martin Jarvis, and once again, I want to welcome you to another perspective. There's a religious proverb that a house divided cannot stand. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. Because I believe that's the situation that many of us are living in our lives. We are like divided people. We're divided as a world, of course. We're divided even as a nation, obviously. We're divided in our communities and in our churches, our religions, even within our religions, the sects of our religions, even our families and ourselves. Even we find ourselves at odds with ourselves. You know, we are divided. House divided against itself cannot stand. And so today I'm going to use as an example something that's going on in our nation today that's only been going on for about a week. And many of you may not be aware of it. But there's this TikTok trend among black folks. It's called Black Scots. And it's like black people in America are discovering their long-lost cousins. And many feeling like they weren't even aware they existed. Now the reality is we know that black people live all over this planet. But we can get so caught up in our own existence, so caught up in our own survival that we're not really cognizantly aware of what actually is going on around us because we're so focused on the struggles that we are involved in ourselves personally. And so when we get wind of Black Scots, wow, and start trending on your TikTok feed and you see these people that look just like you with a really cool accent. And they're good people for the most part. 98%, are really cool. And it's just really a good feeling. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. And we're going to be talking about ourselves, as black people, what we can do or what we should be doing. What I'm suggesting today is all of us come from a dubious past. We have a dubious history. Some of us more dubious and treacherous than others, though. But we all have a particular origin. And there's been this trend, even among black people in America to call ourselves African American. I believe that started probably in the 70s, and so I was there. And it's because we wanted to affiliate ourselves with Africa. We've been called Negro, we've been called colored, but at this particular time, and I remember I was young, that we named ourselves. I believe it was Afro-American at first, and then it was African American, and then it became black. And all the purpose was to connect ourselves with that land of our origin, that place where we came from, okay? And so now we're in this place today. Black people are all over the world in every country on this planet. And it's a very special time because we have this thing called social media. We have this platform called TikTok, which pretty much everybody, most people, especially the young people, are experts at. And so every young person on this planet, every black young person on this planet, no matter how far removed we are from each other, we all have access to this social media platform. And different than what's been happening within this past week is that we've been stepping outside of our communities. I'm sure the Black Scots have been pretty much focused on, TikToking with Black Scots and Black Italians and Black Americans as well within your own communities, within your own nation. But it's like stepping out, It's like the age-old explorers begin stepping out to find this new land, that is there. But you've never visited it before, and so that's where we're at. And it's a very good thing, and people are very happy. People are very excited about it. But then you find some negativity going on. I think all this started probably a couple of weeks ago. There was this singer from South Africa called Tyla. And she meant to break into the American market, make some of that Beyonce money, I mean, of course, who wouldn't? But South Africa, although they've been liberated from the apartheid system, they still have this semi-caste system going on where there might be white folks and Indian folks and coloreds and blacks. And so although that apartheid era is gone, there is still a condition of the mind that has never left certain folks. I'm white, I'm Indian, I'm colored, I'm black. And of course, black is on the lower level. And so when she came here being interviewed before her album hit, she was asked, about this colored thing, and she considered herself colored and not black. And to her, it was innocent. It was simply the reality of the environment in which she was raised. But to people here in America who have such a dubious history, a dubious past, we have a situation where we didn't have a caste system in America. We had a situation what they called the one drop rule, where if you had one drop of black blood, you're a slave. You're no different than the person who's 99.9% black blood. And so that was the environment black Americans came up in, and there became a unity among black people no matter what color, the darkest of dark, or even folks that could even pass for white, they were so light that we were black. There was a unity, okay? Now, I'm not saying there weren't some people stepping out, some people not wanting to identify, but for the most part, that's where freedom comes from, is from unity. So when you look at the travels and the journeys that black people have had from across this world to wherever nations they are now settled in, America has been a pretty treacherous place. Pretty treacherous place as far as lynchings, as far as tortures, and even now there is a racist justice system, a racist prison system, a racist law enforcement system that black people have to continually be aware of. Now it's not really an issue for black folks who have seen the light, who understand what we're facing. Because you can progress in this society, you can maneuver in this society, you can manipulate yourself and conduct yourself in such a way that you can be well in spite of the odds, in spite of the negativities, in spite of the roadblocks that are consistently being set up before you. And so we as I'm expressing, to folks today across the globe at this time, that this is a time for all black people to unite, okay? Now, I know there's this issue within South Africa and black Americans and some of the other African nations and black Americans and black English folks issue with Tylenol, but we have to put those petty differences aside. We have to recognize that the strength of what divided us, of what brought us out from the land from which we came, not in a happy, content way, was that we were divided, okay? So we have to recognize that those divisive tricks, that were perpetrated upon us, are so embedded in us that we perpetrate those same characteristics at times, and I don't even believe we really know it or mean it or want to be this way. Where we can see a situation, that might be a good situation, but we can look at it real hard and find something we don't like about it and focus on that thing we don't like, We don't want to do this at this time. We are in a very unique time in this world's history that we can right a wrong that was done to us, and nobody can have any control over us in that. Okay, so most of us, whatever lands we're in, whatever nations we reside in, we're content in those nations. I'm content being an American. I'm listening to Scottish people; they love Scotland, and Irish blacks, they love Ireland. Everybody loves the nation they're in, and that's good. It's almost like your family. The family that you have, the ills of your family. You know what ills your brother might have, your sister might have, your mama might have, your daddy might have, but that's still your family. So understand that. So we are loyal to our nations, and that is good. But there is another commonality among us, and that is the continent of Africa. Now see, the confusion has been, and I want to say in black Americans as well, is that when we came across this African-American thing, Africa's the homeland. Africa's that place where we originated from. And I want to say, no, not necessarily. Now listen, I want to say the African continent before the colonizations of the Europeans, that's the Africa that we emanate from. That's the Africa that we identify with. Not what's there today. What's there today is a result of the colonization. And I know some of the nations have freed themselves from the colonization hand, like of France and Britain and even the Americas and all. But still, that is not the Africa that we originated from. We originated to the Africa before the white people came, before the Europeans came. That's the origin that we have that is common. And not only is that origin common to all of us, that origin is actually the origin of humanity. The cradle of all humanity is from that place. So that is a special place. See, as much as we want to be loyal to our nations, and that's good, and we are, and we probably always will be, we have to recognize the difference between us and the people that were actually, have their origins or claim their origins in that nation, okay? Here, it's a little bit different in America because it's the Native Americans, and they're still being mistreated, by this government. But you might go to Scotland and you might see these white Scottish folks that can trace their ancestry back to I don't know how many generations, okay? And so they might even look at black people who are actually Scottish nationals, Scottish citizens, and say, you're not really from here. They're not quite getting it, from an educational perspective. But in their minds, they're thinking not simply nation, but their origin, okay? And see, whatever nation you're looking at, whether it's England or the United Kingdom, or whether it's Italy, or whether it's Spain, or whether it's Vietnam, or China, or Korea, or Japan, or whatever, the black folks living there, they may have lived there for 1, 2, or 3 generations. But they don't count their origin as being there. The people there do. Their origin is Africa. See, I heard someone on one of the TikTok pages talking about, well, some of the origins, are not Africa, they're the Caribbean. No. Prior to the Caribbean, they were the African continent, okay? And see, a lot of times a problem is, we talk about our educational system. I know that's been a topic of conversation. How could black Americans not know they were black Scots? They knew they were black Scots. We just weren't, there, with them. We're focusing on our own struggles, But the reality is the education that has come out of Europe that has educated all of us, whatever nation we belong, has been slanted to make the people of that land in which you dwell the protagonists, okay? So you're not going to get the full scoop. And that's a reality on that. Because when you look at the conquest of the African nations by the Europeans, it wasn't because the Europeans were more civilized. It wasn't because the Europeans, had more intellect or had more knowledge and understanding. No, there were tremendous accomplishments in Africa having to do with medicine, having to do with mathematics, having to do with astronomy, having to do with architecture as well that still can't be figured out even today by some of these folks. It couldn't have been them, it had to have been aliens. That's what they say. But what I'm suggesting is what the Europeans had was their brutality and their weapons. So they were able to defeat the more civilized Africans, taking them and doing what they would with them, whether it was through the Caribbean, through the Americas. That's the path. And many black people found themselves fortunate, didn't have to go through a lot of that stuff. But the reality is that it was our origin. That is where we originated from, Africa, before the countries were named. Okay? Before the continent of Africa was all carved up and given to certain European nations to exploit as they would. That's where we are. That's where we come from. So the nations, I'm an American, I'll always be American. I love this country. We love our countries just like we love our families, as dysfunctional as they might be at times. But what we have, the strength, the common bond that we have is our origin. And that is what we've been lacking, because wherever we lived, wherever we feel accepted, in a particular, neighborhoods we live in particular communities, cities we might live in, we might feel accepted, but we still recognize that there's a difference. And then we notice that one person that makes a comment, or that one person that looks at you funny. How would they if there was total evenness, total wellness between us? There isn't. We know that. So what I'm suggesting is let's not use this time to argue. Let's not use this time to banter. That's the division. That was the tool that helped keep us apart, dividing us. And now we got this group in Scotland, this group in the Americas, this group in Italy, this group all over the place. We're still divided, but now that this particular time is different than any other time in history, where we can bring this together and see the strength that can come up above this, beyond the suffering, beyond the negativities, beyond the hurt feelings, beyond the insults, beyond all that stuff that we know we've dealt with. And let me give you a little example. It's sort of an American example, but it's my particular example that kind of, if you look at it on a wide scale, it's exactly what we're talking about. I came up in a military family. And later I was military myself, but I came up in a military family. I was born in Los Angeles, California. And when I was 2 or 3 years old, we moved to Europe. And we lived in Europe for almost 5 years, as a young person, as a kid. And that's where my sister was born. And then Germany. And then from Europe we moved back to the United States, here and there, and ended up doing junior high school and high school in Ohio. But what was special about that time, and this is what I want to correlate it to this time we're living in, it was on the heels of the Black Panther movement. Some of you may not know what that is. Where Black Power came into being, and black is beautiful. You know, those phrases I'm sure you may have heard. Okay, that civil rights movement was in the 60s. That was Dr. Martin Luther King, the man of peace. But right around the time he was finished, there was the Black Panthers for self-defense, and they armed themselves and protected themselves and stood strong against oppression, fought back oppression. And that is the generation that I have come from. I was a young person in the 70s. I was a teenager in the 70s. I was a military man in 1976 as a 17-year-old. So I've seen the difference. But when I was in high school, from 1973 to 1976, there was a strength among black people. Now as a military kid, the military base was in a white community, okay? And it was a white, poor community who really didn't like black folks, okay? But at that particular time, after the Black Power movement, all the black folks in my high school, we were all military kids, okay? And so there were about 1,500 whites and about 200 blacks. But black people never had to worry about anything. Why? Not because the white people were so lovely, but because they were afraid of us. They were afraid of us because we were unified. And the similarity between that scenario and what's going on here, what we're talking about today in social media, is that as military kids, we were from everywhere. I was from California. My brother was from Indiana. My sister was from Germany. Another brother was from Kansas. And so all of my friends were like that. They were all from different, my best friend, he was from Alabama. They were all of us were from different places where our fathers were living and stationed across the United States and Europe and Asia. But at this particular time, we were all together, gathered in this one place. So we all had different origins, okay? We all had different slangs. We even kind of talked a little differently. But the one thing we had in common was that we were black, and there was a unity among us, and nobody could bother us. I don't care if you were the nerd that just wore glasses and just wasn't cool at all, or you were the toughest football player. Nobody had to worry about being abused because there was unity among all these black folks who had different origins. And that's what I'm talking about today. That's what we need to see. I've been looking at some of these social media, TikTok, and you find certain black folks coming in there and trying to sow dissension and division and be mad about this and mad about that. Those days have passed. We have to embrace what is before us, because what I believe is if we miss this opportunity, there will never be an opportunity like this. This is a fledgling opportunity, which means this is a new opportunity, something that's going to happen before anybody even realizes what's happening. And we'll be unified. There'll be a strength and there'll be a power. I've found already how this thing works. I mean, come on, we are limited, many of us. You know, in the situations in our lives, financially, there are certain limits and boundaries. But not with social media, because social media is attached to the World Wide Web. There was this young girl, she was a black Scottish girl, really cool, young, she's probably about 22 years old, and she was just on there, she was just excited that, you know, we've been found, you know. Real funny. And so I followed her. I followed her just because I wanted to support her. So then I'm going through TikTok maybe 2 days later, which was early this morning, and she's making money. She has like 17,000 followers. And she says she can't believe it, that her TikTok page, page was was stagnant, is how she called it, for years. But all of a sudden, within a week, it just blew up. She's already making money. When I'm telling you, this is the power we have. This is what black Americans have learned in America. Okay, we were in bondage for a long time, but we haven't been in bondage since 1865. Yeah, there have been issues and negative issues, but we have survived them. We have found our way through them, navigated through them. And I want to give you this, to understand black Americans, okay? Black Americans, we don't turn our backs on anyone unless they turn their backs on us first, unless they attack us. Now, we're not going to fight. I mean, if we're face to face, we might be fighting. But I mean, as far as a verbal thing, over social media, we'll just shut you out and just go on. Come on, World Wide Web, this individual, there's too many folks out there to be worried about the person who's ragging on you, okay? And this is what we have learned in this nation. Now, what I tell a lot of folks is, like in our nation, slavery began in about 1621. And slavery wasn't ended until 1865. Imagine that. So then between 1621 and 1865, imagine the tremendous lead that white people had in this nation. Black people were slaves. White people were not. And now at this particular time, in 2025, black people and white people are on the same economic level in this nation. Okay? We had a black president, Barack Obama. So what I'm suggesting is either black people are very, very special and creative, which I believe we are, or the white people who are the descendants of the tremendous lead that they had, they really dropped the ball. And I think it's a combination of both. And so what I'm telling you is we know how to make it through the system. We know how to be well. We've had to fight for our lives over the years. While black people were slaves, maybe some of you don't know this story, but if a black person was caught reading or trying to learn to read, they killed you. And they killed the person you were attempting to teach to read. Guess what? Black folks were making sure their kids knew how to read by candlelight, and some of them were murdered for it. But it was that important. So the path that black people took was pretty treacherous, pretty terrible, but we made it. And there's a particular ingenuity, a particular creativity, a particular wisdom and skill that we have in maneuvering through this system and being well in spite of odds being against us. And what I'm sharing with you right now, this is an opportunity for everyone, every black person on this planet who has suffered. This young girl that's got 17,000 followers, that was this morning, she's probably got a whole lot more by now. All she did was she just offered to tell people about Scotland, and she's just telling about her life. I saw she was like showing how she did her eyebrows and her edges, you know what I'm saying? So it's not that difficult. But if we spend our time bickering and mad and talking about this, then drop it. I don't care if you're from South Africa. I don't care, and even as far as Tyler is concerned, all she has to do is realize the path that we've went through and the issue with the colored, how white people named us colored, okay? They named us Negro, okay? And then we named ourselves Afro-American. We named ourselves African-American. We named ourselves black, and black covered every spectrum of every shade of black person with any type of black blood in them. So when someone comes here and says colored, it automatically is a negative chord in the hearts of blacks who had this struggle in this nation since 1621, okay? So all that was a communication error. Is recognizing that when you go to another nation and you try to prosper in another nation, you have to understand where they're coming from. When I was in the military, I joined at 17. When I went overseas, they would take us aside. I was in Asia, and they would say, look, these are the customs and the culture here. And this is what you don't do, what you can do in America. Like I went to Japan. And they said, okay, if you're sitting in a restaurant with a rice bowl, you know, don't stick your chopsticks into the rice bowl and let them stick there, because that's what they do for their dead relatives who die. They set a place for them at the table, have a rice bowl, and have chopsticks sticking right in it. That was the culture of Japan. So as an American, I can't go there, oh, well, that's their culture, not mine, and stick the chopsticks in. No, I'm going to honor their culture. So it behooves us, all of us, as we begin to reach out to each other over this TikTok, over this social media, because I see the black Germans are coming in, black Italians are coming in, black Japanese I saw today all over the place. We need to be cognizant and aware that everybody doesn't think like we do, and so we have to try our best not to offend folks, and at the same time try our best not to be offended if somebody says something that rubs us the wrong way, because we're all coming from different places, man. And instead of looking at each other and rejecting our differences, we can be learning from each other as we begin to meld with each other and become strong, you know, in our community. When I say our community, I mean the community, the world community at large, man. There is like no limitation to this. Some of y'all looking for husbands and wives, who knows? Some of y'all looking for businesses, some of you looking to promote your music and your songs and all this stuff. The opportunity is there, whatever you could think of, whatever products you're selling. Me, believe it or not, I'm a motivational speaker. So I'm really not out here, you know, making money, but I'm just trying to encourage people to do well. And I'm encouraging you right now. Recognize this opportunity. Your black brothers and sisters are out there. Now, you know, I'm a little bit older than most of y'all. Maybe that's why I've lived so long, for such a time as this. I'll be 67 this year, 67 in November. My daughter's 20 years old. She's in college. She's on her way to becoming an attorney. My son has graduated from college about 10 years ago. He's doing his thing. And I'm just exercising, eating right, and trying to help people be better. So I love this opportunity that's kicked up. You know, let's all embrace each other, man. I'm following people all the time simply because I know it helps them in one of their endeavors when people follow them. So follow these folks when you see them out there. And we'll just boost each other. I believe in that religious saying. It's something like, you reap what you sow, okay? Whatever you do, it comes back to you. So try to promote the people that are out there, you know, and try to promote friendship. Try to promote relationships, and who knows what will grow from it. I think it's going to be great, and I can't wait to see how this turns out. If you think this is good, you know, share it with someone. I know this is long. I know TikTok videos are supposed to be 10 minutes long or 5 minutes long, so I might be chopping this thing up. But anyway, I do want to thank you for joining me for another perspective. And I want to invite you to join me again. You take care. Bye.